This flower. At one point in history, this single bulb was worth more than a house. A nice house, not a shack. A fully furnished Amsterdam canal house with furniture inside. Let me be frank, that's insane. And what's even more insane? Smart people did it on purpose. And they do it again. Today we're going to talk about the most ridiculous financial event in history and why it's still happening right now, just with different flowers. I'm Frank, and my job is simple, to talk about finance and the stories behind it. By the end of this video, you'll have a superpower. You'll learn how to recognize a bubble. Let's get into it. It's the 1630s. The Netherlands is basically the United States of Europe. They've built the most advanced economy on the planet. Not through conquest, but through trade. Dutch ships are everywhere. Amsterdam is the financial capital of the world. They invented the stock market. They invented insurance. They invented futures contracts. These people were not stupid. And the Dutch middle class, merchants, craftsmen, traders, they had money. Real money. More than most Europeans had ever seen. And when people have money, they want to show it. A fine house, expensive furniture, a garden. Then somebody imports tulips from the Ottoman Empire, modern-day Turkey. And these aren't the simple tulips you see in every garden today. These are exotic, almost alien flowers. The most prized variety had wild, irregular streaks of color. Crimson, violet, white, like flames frozen inside a petal. They looked like nothing that had ever grown in Europe before. Here's the twist. Nobody knew why they looked that way. The streaking was actually caused by a virus, a Tulip mosaic virus, that weakened the bulb while making it visually spectacular. The most beautiful tulips were also the most fragile. They were genuinely hard to reproduce. Supply was naturally limited. So rare, plus beautiful, plus wealthy buyers equals very expensive. And at first, this made complete economic sense. These were luxury goods with real scarcity. Nothing crazy yet. But then something shifted. And this is the moment you need to watch for because it happens in every bubble. People stopped buying tulips because they loved flowers. They started buying tulips because they expected to sell them for more money later. The flower became a financial instrument, and that changed everything. By 1636, tulip bulbs were being traded in taverns, actual pubs like stocks on a trading floor. Except instead of shares, it was flower seeds. A whole informal market appeared overnight, with its own rules, its own brokers, its own momentum. And then came the futures contracts. You could now buy a bulb that didn't even exist yet. A bulb still sitting in the ground, under the snow, months from harvest. You were buying a promise of a bulb and paying a fortune for it. Here's how crazy the prices got. One variety called Semper Augustus, deep red petals, white edges, genuinely stunning, had only 12 bulbs known to exist in all of Holland in 1624. By 1637, a single Semper Augustus bulb sold for 6,000 guilders. A skilled craftsman, a carpenter, a blacksmith, earned around 300 guilders a year. That one bulb cost 20 years of salary. Today, that's roughly equivalent to $500,000. People weren't just spending savings, they were mortgaging houses, selling farmland their families had worked for generations. One famous transaction, a man traded 12 acres of land for a single viceroy bulb. Another paid with a bed, clothing, silverware, cheese, a pile of wheat, a barrel of wine, 2 oxen, 4 pigs, and 1,000 pounds of butter. All for one tulip. And the thing is, it was working. If you bought in 1634 and sold in 1636, you were genuinely rich. The returns were real. Every person who missed the first wave was desperate to catch the next one. February 1637. A routine tulip auction in Haarlem. Sellers show up. Buyers don't. One auction. No buyers. And just like that, the spell was broken. Within weeks, prices collapsed by 99%. Not dropped. Collapsed. A bulb worth 6,000 guilders was suddenly worth less than an onion. People who had signed futures contracts, promises to buy bulbs at peak prices, were now legally obligated to pay fortunes for something worth nothing. The Dutch government eventually stepped in and let most contracts be cancelled for 10% of face value. Still brutal. Lives were ruined. So who got hurt? Mostly the late arrivals, the people who heard about it from their neighbors and jumped in at the top. The baker, the furniture seller. Sound familiar? Here's what actually happened, and this is the part that matters. At some point, the tulip stopped being a flower and became a story, a shared belief. The belief was, this thing will be worth more tomorrow than it is today. And as long as enough people believe that, the price keeps going up. The belief becomes self-fulfilling. This has a name. Economists call it the greater fool theory. You don't have to think the tulip is worth 6,000 guilders. You just have to believe there's a greater fool out there who will pay you more for it later. And FOMO, fear of missing out, is the fuel. When your neighbor is talking about how much money he made, your brain stops asking, is this a good investment? And starts asking, why am I not doing this? And in the end, that's what trapped people. Not the tulips themselves, but the combination of greed and FOMO. The fear that everyone else was getting rich while you stood still. And once enough people start chasing easy money at the same time, logic quietly leaves the room. Now here's the uncomfortable part. We didn't learn. South Sea Company, 1720. British investors pour money into a company trading with South America. Small problem, the trade barely existed. The price collapsed. Parliament passed laws banning speculative bubbles. Within 50 years, there was another one. Dot-com bubble, 1999. Websites with no revenue, no product, sometimes no employees. Valued at billions. Then, crash. NASDAQ lost 80% of its value. Crypto 2021. I'm not saying crypto has no value, that's a different video. But certain coins with cartoon dogs on them hit market caps of billions of dollars based entirely on memes and celebrity tweets. Then crash. Same pattern every time. The tulip didn't crash. Tulips are still beautiful. They're still in every supermarket for €2. What crashed was the belief. The story collapsed. And when the story collapsed, the money collapsed with it. If this video made you think, like it, share it with that one friend who's about to do something expensive. And drop in the comments, what's the modern tulip? I want to know what you think. I'm Frank. And that was Frankly About Money.